Hi everyone, welcome back to A Sky Full of Stars, Hikari's Route, Episode 4. So, we had a pretty big breakup between Sai and Hikari, and I feel that's because Hikari still can't understand that Akito does not want Saya and wants Hikari instead, and Saya understands and respects the feelings. So, Hikari had Saya and Akito pair up, and on the bus ride, she had Akito and Saya sit together, and it was very obvious to Saya that, well, Hikari's trying to use me as a puppet, and trying to stubbornly bring me closer to Akito, even though I told Hikari that, well, he wants you instead. And it led to a breakup, and Hikari is blaming it on Akito. It's like, well, why does he want to go with me? I'm not a fit, and Saya is the better choice for him. And now Hikari is all stranded alone in a train car, and it's raining outside. And it's because she wanted to set up the stargazing event all by herself without the help of the Six Stars Club. And during the whole day, everyone's been wondering where Hikari is. And we do see that Sai is still upset in present times. So I wonder how it's going to happen, or what's going to happen next, and how are they going to resolve all these intense growing conflicts. And for many people, it's like, well, I find it shocking that Hikari and Saya would end up in a huge fight and break up, given that they've always been together, even as little kids, and it looked as if they're still together even today. So right now we're in this childhood memories where it looks like Hikari and Saya are stranded from the rain, and they're kind of talking about Akito. And we're just at the beginning of the conversation, so let's see how the conversation goes from here.
アキト？そうだな。バカだなーって思ってるよ。そういうんじゃなくて、違うの？好きなのかなって。
So, do you like him?
好きだよ。やっぱりそうなんだ。じゃなきゃ一緒に遊ばないよ。さやのことも好きだよ。ありがとう。でもね、そういうんじゃなくてね。何言ってるかわかんないよ。私ね、はくんが。
Well, to be honest, even after she told me about how she felt, I still didn't really get it. I was just a kid. I didn't have any clue about things like love. But Sai looked so cute turning red while she told me how she felt about Akito. I remember feeling a throbbing deep in my chest. And that's when I decided to help her however I could. So I think it's like, well, it's kind of bad to leave a cute Saya and make her upset, so I think it's best if I let Akito go with Saya so that, well, it makes sense because I want to help poor little Saya. And she was my best friend after all. And not understanding what love is, however, it ended up being a little more than I could handle. And I did things like pass drinks around so Saya and Akito would use the same straw or make her fall over so he would have to catch her. And we've seen those in the divergence route. So just like Akito had told me before, my methods of assisting were crude and ineffective. And at some point along the way, a strange feeling awakens inside me. So clouds hung heavy in the sky, looking as if it might start snowing. I was hiding on the train car, but the icy wind still found its way in, making me shiver. So I felt something soft and warm on the back of my neck that made me look up. So what's going on? Oh, so put that on. So his speech is blunt. So I think sometime in history, Hikari also got stuck on the train car, and Akito came to save Hikari. But he'd given me his scarf. I remember it still being warm from his body. Well, they say dummies don't catch cold, but I wouldn't let your guard down this year.
ありがとう。それ、私がバカだって意味？
So you're implying me that I'm a dummy? No.
そうじゃない。あんたの方がバカでしょうが。こないだの算数のテスト32点だったくせに。
Man, it really is freezing. So Akito was huddled up on a seat in the corner where the draft was not as strong.
ったく、失礼なやつだな。
So I grumbled slightly under my breath, even as I was soaking up the warmth from the scarf he had given to me. And by that time, I had already been slightly aware of the new sensation growing inside me. I've known what it was as well. So I already fallen in love with Akito.
あ、雪だ。降ってきたよ、アキト。
And it's snowing. Wait, seriously? But it's already too late. So Saya had already told me how she felt.
積もるかな。積もったら雪合戦しようね。
Well, don't expect me to go soft. So I wonder if Akito ended up being sick at the end. I'm sure Akito was okay at the end. So he got out pretty sick too. And all because he let me his scarf. I remember going to visit him and taking some strawberry shortcake. We ended up eating it together and it tasted good.
やっぱりバカはアキトだわ。
So back then, I wasn't sure of my own feelings. Well, after all, it had been the first time I ever felt love. Well, actually, that wasn't true. Even now, I still wasn't sure if the strange feeling rolling around inside me is actually love or not. And it might have been love, or it might have been something completely different. And the only thing I knew was that I needed to hide it.
私が私の気持ちに気づけたのは、さやを見てたからだもん。
So she's cute, the way her love for Akito made her act. And she always been more girlish than me, but her girlish charm seems to grow stronger as her feelings for Akito also grew. And watching the way she acted towards him is what made me realize I had those same feelings. And besides the reason I was able to fall in love. And I thought that maybe I was just trying to imitate her though. So she always been so ladylike. I looked up to her in that respect. So even if it had been okay for me to show my feelings on the outside, I still decided to keep them hidden.
だってアキト、私のこと女の子だって思ってなかったもん。
So the problem is that, well, I've always been like a tomboy, and I don't think Akito sees me as girly-like compared to Saya. So he always treated me like another one of his guys. And I guess it wasn't his fault though. Well, back then, I always did act like one of the boys. well, maybe things would have been different if I had even a tenth the girlishness of Saya. But that's why I decided to support her instead. And no matter what we did, though, Akito never seemed to notice how Saya felt. Well, after all, he's still been a kid as well. So back then, we had been keeping a planetary observation journal in an attempt to win the citywide independent research contest. And we had been working on it for almost a year. It was nearly complete. And that also meant that the day one I would have to move away was approaching. And I knew this because of my sister, and even if everything went as planned and they canceled the dam's construction, the railroad would still have been shut down. And I continued working on the journal with them. However, I was having too much fun to stop. So Hikari pretty much forgot about, well, the main purpose of the journal was to convince the city mayor to abandon the dam project. And it's like, well, I know the truth, but I still wanted the enjoyment of being together with Akito and Saya. And obviously the sister told Akito the truth. The three of us were traveling the galaxy together. But even that journey would soon be coming to an end. And I would have to get off before our train reached the destination. And if that was the case, I wanted to at least help Sai express her feelings before I'm gone. So why hasn't Akito realized how she felt towards him? I'm sure he has. And that's why he was able to tell Saya the truth and Saya was able to accept it. And that's why Saya would turn against Hikari. So I started wondering if maybe it was my fault for always being in the way. So whenever I was around, we all start acting silly. Akito is shy as well. So I figured the atmosphere would never be right for them while I'm there. And that's why that day... So how about tonight? So now that we're on vacation, we can stargaze all night. Wait, Hikari?
やめとく。さやと言っといでよ。
So, you're not coming? But we've been looking forward to winter vacation for ages. So what's wrong with you today? So did you eat something weird? I felt a slight pain in my chest seeing the perplexed look on Akito's face. And I thought that maybe I was about to do something that could never be undone.
飽きちゃった。星とか見るのもう飽きちゃったんだ。だからもういいやって。ノートももう完成してるし、あとはさやと二人でやりなよ。じゃあね。
Hey, wait, Hikari?
Hikari-chan!
So that was the time when Hikari gave, like, I'm not interested in stars anymore. And Akito didn't understand it. And that was what kind of eventually led to the fight. Or the breakup. And just thinking about it made my chest ache again. I really hurt them that day. Especially for Akito. One of my best friends and the boy that I liked. And the incident with the journal was not too long after that. And from then on, Akito and I just stopped talking to each other. Akito started hanging out with Takeichi and the other boys, while Saya and I started hanging out with just the two of us. And it stayed that way until the day we graduated. So after the ceremony, I waited for Akito on the bridge we had always used. So I stared down at the love letter in my hand with a feeling of melancholy. So Sai had written this. And during the period Akito and I had not been speaking, Sai had written the letter and tried to give it to him on more than one occasion. So she was too shy, though, and was never able to do it. So I ended up taking the letter and giving it to him in her place. So it was the last big job I had to do before leaving Mikazuki Village. So somewhere in the corner of my heart, there was a part of me that I didn't want to give to him. And if I was the one to give him the letter, I would be giving up my own feelings towards him, and that's how I felt.
まあ、アキトだってサヤを選ぶに決まってるしね。
And even the envelope with the bunny sticker on it looked cute and girlish. I would never have been able to match this. And even if I was not moving away, there would have been no chance for me. Well, then again, I'm sure if Hikari didn't move, then a lot of the bad things would not have happened. So Hikari would not have mentioned that, well, I'm bored, so you can go look at astronomy together with Saya. And the whole damn project, or that notebook, just to present to the city mayor, that would not have happened either. And it probably would have led to a different outcome that might have been more positive. So in every corner, my first love had been over before it even started. And if that was the case, I could at least help my friend's wish come true. And Akito had finally shown up, and he's alone. So I hopped down from the guardrail where I had been sitting, swinging my legs. I was about to say something, but it had been a while since we'd spoken. I was nervous, but also a little happy. So what is she doing there? Or just forget her. But he completely ignored me and just kept on walking. Okay. I couldn't blame him, I guess, so we had been in the middle of a fight. So I screwed up my courage and called out his name, so he stopped and turned around to look at me. So what do you want? So at the very least, I had to tell him how Saya felt, so I thrust the letter at him. And Akito looked at me surprisingly, but took it. Wait, what's this? So I felt like I was about to burst, so the moment I got the words out, I turned and ran away. And I hadn't even remembered to tell him who the letter was from, let alone repair our friendship before I had to move away. So the big problem that I saw with Hikari handing the letters that Hikari didn't mention who it was from. So to Akito, it felt like Hikari was the one who wrote it. And that's why, because of the fight, he never read the letter until he brought it up and Hikari wanted it back. And that's what got him to renew his interest in the love letter. So that was the day I had given up my feelings of love. And it had been my own choice. Yet still, so I hugged my knees, still huddled up in the dark and gloomy train car that time had forgotten. I felt lonely and sad. and the pain in my chest was growing. So why had I given up my feelings back then? Maybe it was hard to not help Saya. So why had I decided to let somebody else have him instead? Hikari? So, when did Akito show up? So the rain was coming down so hard that I could not tell if my umbrella was doing me any good or not. But I finally made it to the old train station, past all the mud and the little puddles. And water is running down the platform in a little river as I ran to the train car. So at least there's enough traction for him to make it up. So I folded up my umbrella and peered around. After a moment, I could hear the sound of soft crying mixed in with the rain. So somebody was huddled up in the seat in the far corner. Hikari. So Hikari raises her face and looks at me with an expression of utter disbelief. So wait, he would come at this time? And how would he know that I'm here? I'm right. I thought she might be here, and here she is. So crouched alone in the corner of the dark train car, no less. So the blanket size she had wrapped around herself was quickly forgotten as she jumped to her feet. So Hikari flung her arms around me. So, you're here. So she must have felt completely helpless up here alone, so she clung tighter to me and continued to cry. And I returned her the embrace. She felt so cold. She must have gotten wet in the rain. It's alright, so I'm here. So I hugged her tighter and began rubbing her shoulders to try and warm her up a little. And I was hot from running all the way up here, and Hikari's chilled body actually felt good against me. So it's alright. Everything's okay. I continued to share some of my warmth as I waited for her to calm down. So after a while, she finally stops crying. So, are you alright? I looked into her eyes as I asked, but she backed away without answering. So she looks sullen as she averts her eyes. So, Hikari? So anyways, what are you doing here? I'm just worried about you. I thought you might have come up here, so I came to check, and then I found you here crying. So wait, so why did you not pick up your phone? I've never been in that much of a hurry or gotten this wet in my life. So telephone? Cell phone? Yeah, your phone, so I tried calling you a dozen times. Well, I wasn't sure if she was just trying to hide her embarrassment or what, but Hikari's attitude suddenly becomes distant. So, it's kind of obvious to Akito that Hikari's hiding something. Well, is that really something somebody who would just bawling her eyes out is allowed to say? So I came all the way up here because I was worried sick about you. So it started raining when I reached the dam, and it kept getting stronger and stronger and running up the path hadn't been easy. And I hadn't had any proof that she was actually even here either. So now standing here, soaking wet except for the small part of my upper body that I have been able to protect with the umbrella.
別に頼んでなんか。だいたいあんたはさやのそばにいてあげなさいよ。なんで私のとこなんかに来るのよ。
So once again, Hikari is asking about, well, why are you here instead of being with Saya? Oh, so you're still on that?
何度だって言ってやるわ。あんたはさやと付き合うべきなんだもん。
So I'll keep asking you that because it's obvious that you should be with Saya. So my feelings don't count.
それがおかしいって言ってんの。どうして私を選ぶのよ。さやの方が断然可愛いでしょうが。
Well, how should I know the reason? So I suddenly raised my voice and shouted, and then inclining my head, wondering why we were talking about this now. So all I wanted to do was to make sure that Hikari has not been stuck up here all alone in the rain. Well, I don't know how you feel, but... So I caught myself and swallowed my next words.
好きなのは
Well, never mind. I promised you
何よ。
before that it was the last time. So my confession on the bus had been my last, and I made a promise. So my feelings have not changed, of course, and I had no plans of falling in love with any other girl, so that had been the last confession I ever make.
そう。ふん、せいせいしたわ。二度と言わないでちょうだいね。
And those are your true feelings?
そうよ。ずっとそう言ってるじゃない。
But then again, Hikari's looking down, so... Oh, fine then. So I'm sorry for pushing. Well, forget about me if you want. So, but at least fix things with Saya. And after I said this, I handed the umbrella I had been using to Hikari.
どうする気？
Oh, I'll see you later. So I'm gonna leave.
じゃあなって、ちょっと、アキト！
It's like, well, if it's gonna be this way, it's like, well, I should be with Saya. Then I'm just gonna give you the umbrella and I'll just go as you please. I ignore her as I ran back out into the downpour. So my only purpose here, after all, is just to make sure you're safe and allow you to be able to safely make your way back to the station. That's it. Akito runs back into the storm without an umbrella. I stood in the doorway for a little while before finally making my way back into the corner and sitting down.
なんか急に寒くなった気がする。
So it had felt so warm when I was hugging Akito. Almost hot. I need to wrap up the blanket again before all the heat he had given me escaped. But I kept glancing back at the door instead. I never thought he would actually take off and leave me here. But that's what the impression that Hikari gave to Akito, so... I figure he'd grumble a bit, but stay here with me. Well, how stupid of me. But then again, Hikari's making it unwelcoming for Akito to stay, so... I still half expected him to come walking back through the door at any moment.
だってあいつ優しいし。
So he had been that way since the first time I had met him. So he'd been the only one who had helped me save Kotaro when I found him floating down the river in a cardboard box. But then again, I was not very pleased with Hikari's way of saving Kotaro. She's going to do like a long jump. And then it's like, well, if you do get the dog Kotaro, how will you make your way back? So it had been his first day at the new school, but he still gotten his pants wet in the river just to help me. And he was normally blunt and a bit shy around girls, but he never hesitated to lend a hand to somebody in trouble. And even today, he'd come all the way up here in the pouring rain to just make sure I am okay. But there's no sign of him coming back. And there's no way he could hide somewhere nearby and still see me through the heavy rain. So did he really go home? Had he finally grown fed up with me for being such an obstinate jerk? Well, never mind. I promised you before that it was the last time.
言ってくれないんだ。好きって。もう言ってくれないんだ。やだ。やだよ、そんなの。
So I grabbed the umbrella that he left me and ran outside. So I stopped on the platform, fat raindrops still pouring down in sheets. And I stared out into the distance, but could only see a rainy haze, and there's no sign of Akito. I was crying as I screamed out into the rain. And the words that I wanted to say for so long, but never could. And I was just about to run after him, but... Wait, do you really mean that? And it looks like Akito has been hiding somewhere the entire time. I turn around, and Akito is sitting under a covered waiting area on the platform. So the roof is nearly gone. He had thoroughly fooled me after all. So despite it all, I could not hold it in any longer.
そうよ。そうだもん。好きだもん。アキトのこと、ずっとずっとずっとずっとずっと好きだったんだもん。
So I thought he was only going to hug me, but my words were cut off as something warm pressed against my lips. So I hadn't finished speaking. I hadn't yet said it enough. And I wanted to tell him everything I liked about him and how hard it had been to keep it all bottled up for so long. But now I was physically unable to speak. And if this was the case, then I would have to let him know without words. So I pressed my lips harder against his, and I wasn't as good as the actress in those movies or TV shows. And it was a terrible kiss, but I did not know how to do it any better. It was the first time I kissed anybody by choice. And I wrapped my one free hand around Akito and pulled him closer. I was suddenly aware of his hand gripping the umbrella. And it was shaky and doing a poor job of holding the umbrella up. I considered just letting it fall. Akito had both hands free to wrap around me as much as he wanted to. And he caressed my back, and one hand even wandered down to my butt in excitement. And I am surprised, but I didn't want him to stop. So I pulled my lips just enough to speak.
もう両思いって分かったんだし。だから約束破りにはならないから。言ってよ、アキト。
So I couldn't tell if he meant to tease or not, but he remained silent.
今言ってくれたら、私、今までとろけちゃうから。
So I was looking up at him timidly, but he looked back at me with nothing but affection and whispered, "Well, I love you." So if I love you more than you know, Hikari. And as soon as he said this, he could not hold himself any longer and he pulls me into another deep kiss. It was an awkward, clumsy kiss. And the cold rain was falling on us now, but my lips felt so hot that I thought they might just get burned. And once again, they're back in the train, but at least Hikari was finally able to openly admit that she likes Akito. And I think Akito can sense that, well, I'm sure Hikari does, and she's just trying to cover up with the Saya thing. So if I step aside, then it'll really push Hikari to admit the truth and reveal how she really feels about me. So we've gone back into the train car, and I am once again fully aware of the weight of the wet clothes clinging to my skin. So Hikari didn't say anything as she pulled out a handkerchief and began drying off my face and the back of my neck.
服脱いじゃった方がいいかも。風邪ひいちゃうから。
So Hikari's face turns red and she turns around. Well, you're probably right. And I keep telling myself it was dark and we couldn't see, but my heart is beating fast. So with Hikari facing the other way, I stripped off my clothes and hung them to dry on the back of a seat. So Hikari sat down on a nearby seat and opened her blanket.
一つの毛布に入った方が暖かいでしょ。
Okay. So I sat down next to her and we curled up together under the blanket. And here you go. So the blanket traps Hikari's body's warmth inside, and it was warm. Well, you're warm, Hikari.
そう？
So this happened before, didn't it? And the other time we had been on the roof of the train car.
こうしたらもっと暖かいよ。
So Hikari presses herself against me. So if I remember on the roof of the train, they were together for a bit until Saya got upset. It's like, hey, how or why am I left out? So they had to let Saya in. She entwines our arms in the blanket, forcing our bodies together. So feeling Hikari's heat against my skin was almost too hot.
どうかな？
Yeah. Hikari had taken off her wet jacket, and all she was wearing is a thin blouse. And I could feel not only heat, but softness as well. And the feeling that I had while kissing and holding her before rose up again. So, can we get closer? I asked this, but slid my hand around Hikari's hips without warning or waiting for a reply. I held Hikari close under the blanket. Be gentle. Oh, it's super warm like this.
そう？じゃあいいよ。
So they both want quiet and just held each other. And I felt like the temperature under the blanket keeps rising and rising. I couldn't help getting excited, so I put my lips to Hikari's ears and whispered, "Well, I love you."
クする。
I could feel Hikari's body shiver next to mine, and I want her so much I could not stand it. And as I held her, I rubbed my chest on hers.
アキト、これなんかいやらしい。
Hikari's chest had been touching the arm I had wrapped around her. So I held her in the tight space so as not to move the blanket off, so I naturally pressed against her.
アキト、それわざとやってない？
Well, I can't help it in this position, so it's not on purpose.
本当かな？
Really? Russell?
ほら、やっぱりわざとやってるでしょ？
Well, I know you're doing it on purpose. Well, your body is so soft, Hikari, and it feels good like this.
人をデブみたいに言うな。太ってるのは胸だけだもん。
And she's cute when she's angry. And I want Hikari even more than that. So rub my chest on hers while holding her.
ねえ、アキトは
Yes?
さっきのまた言って。
Well, I want to hear the words again.
耳元で
So I put my lips to Hikari's ear. Okay, so once again, I love you. So Hikari writhed her body like I was tickling a sensitive spot. And because of that, her chest pressed against my arm again.
アキトに好きってささやかれると頭がぼーっとしてきちゃう。
Well, you're cute, Hikari, so that's why I like you.
私も好き。
So I love how nice you are to hold.
こーら、調子に乗るな。
Well, don't get carried away. I joked around and Hikari tries to push me away. I held Hikari tight as so she could not get away. And then I put my lips on her ear and I didn't whisper, so I kissed her.
キスは耳じゃなく唇にするものでしょ？
I kissed from her ear to her chest and then down to her neck, and then slowly I moved to her mouth.
いやらしい。絶対調子に乗ってるよ。
Hikari mussed up my hair while she shivered.
すごくドキドキする。
So I could feel Hikari's heartbeat in my chest. Well, you're not kidding. So wait, what's the matter? So why are you quiet?
さっきからわざとやってるでしょ。私が恥ずかしがるの見て楽しんでるんだ。
Well, you're right. So I'm doing it on purpose, but I'm not enjoying your embarrassment. I gently held onto Hikari. Well, you're so adorable, I can't stand it. But this is a first for me. I don't know what else to do.
アキトの好きにすればいいと思う。何？
So what's wrong? It's just well, I didn't expect that, Hikari, so you must be thinking something inappropriate.
違うもん。私はアキトが好きなだけだもん。アキトのすることだったら大体なんだって嬉しいだけだもん。
So I held Hikari close again and pressed my lips hard against hers. And the intense kiss is less clumsy than the first. And the kiss intensified, each of us letting the other know how strong our desire is. And for a while we forget ourselves and coveted each other's lips. Well, it's amazing. So your body. And each time we kissed, I wanted to get closer, but her chest was almost an obstacle. In touching it, I felt it was more voluminous than it looks. Well, you were so flat when we were kids. Well, I had also changed as a man. And it had only been a couple years and she had changed this much because the girls are so strange.
Akito がさっきから私のことをやらしい目で見てくる。
So her words are accusing, but her tone sounded happy somehow. Do you like being looked at like this? Hikari goes quiet. Or do you not like it? And the mix of desire and anxiety I felt may have made me a little afraid. Hikari shakes her head.
嫌じゃない。でも、照れちゃうよ。だって、私のことなんか、女の子として見てもらえてないって思ってたもん。
But you are such a girl.
おっぱいだけ褒められてるみたいで嫌だ。
Is it because I look like a girl? Well, not only that. So you're so cute, Hikari, with a good body. Well, that's what Hikari was mentioning. And you are really ladylike on the inside. She knew that from my earlier teasing confession. So your lips are so soft when we kiss. Well, can I not? I joked, but Hikari looks at me with sulking eyes. Well, you're easy. And without thinking, I laugh.
ちょろくない。キスはあと100回しなきゃダメよ。
She says this and then puffs out her lips. And I stroke Hikari's chest. Well, I love you. And I said this to accompany the kiss. So the sun set at some point and our bodies were touching in the darkened train car. And the aftertaste of the 100 kisses remains. And our hearts and bodies were filled with the joy of telling someone you like them and the sharing heat and feelings with them. So we sat almost wordlessly on the seat holding hands with our shoulders together. And that was all we needed. But the heat gradually dissipated. And there was so much heat before, but it had gotten chilly. So I pulled the blanket up to my shoulders. So Hikari snuggles her head against my shoulders. Yeah. I'm sorry. I wasn't really thinking. As I calmed down, I started to worry that maybe I had overdid some things.
ちょっとびっくりしたけど、でも嫌じゃなかったよ。
Well, I'm glad. So you were really into it too, Hikari.
だって嬉しかったんだもん。アキトが私 私のことエッチな目で見てくれるのが。
So isn't that something you normally hate?
アキト以外だと嫌だけど、私ずっとアキトに女の子として見てもらえてないって思ってたから、エッチな目で見るってことは女の子扱いしてくれてるってことでしょ。
Hikari looks at me and asks like she was worried for some reason. I planted a light kiss on Hikari's forehead. Well, you are really a cute girl, Hikari.
照れる。私にも女の魅力が少しはあったんだね。
Well, I was honestly surprised when I saw you again. I thought, well, is that really Hikari?
それって子供の頃はやっぱり女の子扱いしてなかったってことじゃ。
Well, honestly, we had spent those days not worrying about who was a boy or a girl. And the fact that Hikari had been especially boisterous and played more like a boy and had only exacerbated it.
あの頃に告白してたら振られてたってことじゃ。危なかった。
Well, when I was a kid, it would have been impossible even to force me to visit or talk about love. But I don't think I would have felt bad if Hikari had told me she liked me. Well, in fact, knowing how Hikari felt may have started feelings for me too. Well, I would have liked to have seen the Hikari I played with as a kid slowly change into the Hikari that I see now, so the girl. So you still think I'm a boy, right? So what's with that look?
もしかしてアキトが私に感じてる女の子らしさって胸だけじゃないの？
No, that's not what I mean. So I hurriedly corrected myself. And that was the thing that had changed the most, but it was not the only thing. So more than that has become girls, you look good with long hair now, and you're soft to hold. And your face, well, that's always been cute.
照れる。恥ずかしいこと言わないで。
So embarrassed, Hikari drills her head into my shoulder. It was cute and girly that she got shy over such trivial things.
幸せだよ。
Yeah, me too. So we held each other again, feeling each other's heat and breath. So Hikari noticed something and raised her face. So what's wrong?
ねえ、もしかして。
Oh, so Hikari is looking out of the window and listening. I did the same and noticed too.
雨上がってる。
So, hey, look, the rain stopped, which is a good thing. So we stepped outside to find out that the rain had completely stopped.
それにほら、星が見えるよ。
And now the clouds are cleared up and we can see the stars. So the stars shone in the cloudless sky.
綺麗。
Yeah. So we touched shoulders again. And we were not able to do this naturally a little while ago. Well, we weren't ashamed of anything anymore because now we are boyfriend and girlfriend. So I put my arm around Hikari's shoulders and looked up at the stars. So in a high point of the sky, I could see the great square of Pegasus and the star shining red near there most has been Mars. And the starry sky is pretty. The mood is perfect to kind of emotional. But still they're cold. It was night and the temperature has dropped quite a bit. The wind is blowing, so standing there with no warm clothes made it us cold. So now that the rain has stopped, we can go home. So why don't you come to my place then?
夜中に女の子部屋に入れたりして大丈夫なの?
So is it okay? Well, if it's Hikari, then I'm sure it'll be fine. Though it would probably upset Miharu sensei. Well, that's Miharu and she has her own problems.
でも無理すればまだ帰れるかな?
Well, you don't have to rush, so you can just stay in my room. So, I'm sure now the trains are stopped and you'll have to walk home. I held her hand so Hikari looks up at me curiously. Well, I want to be with you until morning.
おお、そうだね。そうしよう。
So with her face flushed red, Hikari agrees to my suggestion. Hikari? So it's morning, so wake up. I whispered and shook Hikari sleeping next to me. So Hikari sat up and rubbed her eyes sleepily. Oh, so you're in my room. So do you remember? So hurry up and get ready to go. You're gonna be late. So I woke up early and got ready to open the store as always. Okay, so this is a good place to stop for this episode. So, if I remember from the Japanese version, there was actually an NH scene that happens. So, it happens instead of the 100 kisses that Moe Novel has dubbed it as. And that's why they're super warm and then it cools off afterwards. But anyways, at least Hikari is able to openly confess that she likes Akito. And I think the idea of pretending to leave, that kind of really got Hikari to realize her true feelings. Although Hikari does feel that, well, Akito's only with me because she thinks of me as a boy, so like a friend, and that Saya is more girly than me and she makes more sense to be with Akito. And I know Akito's like, well, I didn't see you as a girl, but I really wanted to see how you changed from a little tomboy to a full lady. And now, in Akito's sense, he feels that Hikari looks more ladylike than Saya. Well, except for Hikari's habits. So I'm sure Hikari eats crazily, she thinks of crazy ideas, and I'm sure movements make her look more manly than what, or compared to Saya. So anyways, we're going to see how this relationship goes, and I know Hikari and Saya are still not on good terms with each other, and I wonder how they're going to resolve this, or that. But anyways, with that in mind, I'll see you in the next episode.